Joining us now is Matt Koch with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Matt's a vice president with the Chamber of Commerce's Institute for 21st Century Energy. This is called the Energy Institute. And Matt's responsible for leading the Institute's effort to promote and expand support for the development of Canadian oil sands and access to Arctic resources. And he's very much been on the forefront of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, trying to get that done. So this is a good issue to talk about. Koch began his career as a legislative assistant for Representative Bill Paxton. Remember him from New York? I think he was in Staten Island. And I think if memory serves me, Paxton went on to marry another congresswoman. They dated. They were both single, Italian name, Molinari, from, I think, the same general area. If memory serves me correct, I got to do all this from memory. But joining us now, without further ado, Matt Koch, U.S. Chamber. Matt, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, is my memory right? Bill Paxton?
I would be remiss. Yeah, I hate to correct you, but I'm from Buffalo, New York. Bill Paxton was from Buffalo, New York. He had taken over Jack Kemp's seat when Jack had run for president back in 1988.
Right.
So people in Western New York would want to make sure that I ensure that you knew that Buffalo is about 8 hours from Staten Island, so it's a good distance away, and they try to ensure that they know that they're very different from the people in downstate. So,
well, I try to do this from memory, but didn't he marry Molinari, the congresswoman from Staten Island, or do I have this all mixed up?
That's absolutely right. Bill and Susan had known each other actually from when Bill was in Albany, and Susan's father was a very active. He was the borough president of Staten Island. He was also the congressman, and then Susan took over his seat. So they knew each other, and they've been married, I don't know, since 1990 or early 90s, somewhere like that. But have two daughters and doing really well.
And Susan Molinari was from Staten Island, right?
That's correct.
All right, so I had 50% of the family right? You got to grant me that. I knew there was a Staten Island connection somewhere in there with the Molinari family, but married Bill Paxton. And then, of course, in that seat, I supported the Jack Kemp for President campaign in '88. I could probably write a book on that. It was a complete and utter disaster. There was so many things that went wrong in that campaign, but Jack was certainly the happy warrior. And then I was involved in a congressional campaign there for Jack Davis, I think in what was that? He was the Democrat, I'm going to say 86, somewhere in there.
I think it was around 86 there.
Yeah, he almost won that, and that our big issue then was trade, and he was really the father of those of us that wanted to get out of NAFTA, get rid of these free trade deals like me. I'm a protectionist. He became our lightning rod. We almost won that. Anyway, Matt, let's talk about the pipeline. I don't know how long we've been talking about this pipeline on our show, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And every month goes by, it gets a little closer. Where is FERC? Where do we stand now with this?
Well, FERC is working through the process. They're expected to produce their final environmental impact statement. I mean, this is a process where they work with the company, they work with regulators, they work with their own staff to review a lot of different material and information, and to try to ensure that the project is up to the proper regulations and meets the proper standards for our environmental protection laws. So they're going to produce this document hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I think expected, and then make a decision on whether the project can move forward, likely this fall. So that's the status. You're looking at about almost a 2-year cycle, probably for construction, maybe a little less. So that's the hope of all of us who are big supporters of the project, and I know the companies are looking to build it too.
Okay, so Matt, let me just ask you this straight out. We get the regulatory agency, which is FERC, that's moving forward. We already know the amazing number of jobs that the pipeline construction is going to bring, and then the opportunity to get manufacturing companies to come along the pipeline so they can tap into the energy. We pretty much know about that. But let me just ask you this straight out. The protesters, and many of these are paid, they're just paid protesters from the George Soros-funded organizations. Do they have any impact on this at all? Is there anything they could do to stop it?
They can. The state has a role in this as also, and they've been trying to work. We're trying to work with the state, but you had some state legislators and some state governors that were supporting it. But they really are trying to impact FERC. I mean, you're going back to the federal agency and trying to weigh in as much as they can at hearings and at public hearings. But the state has a role in actually also reviewing some of the water permits that are needed, and so there's going to be some hearings coming up in Virginia and some of the other states just in the next few weeks that for in order for people to weigh in on whether these pipelines should go under these waterways and what should the process be. So there's a number of roles, and the environmentalists are impacting that. I mean, they're trying to slow this down. They're trying to stall this. We saw this in Keystone. We saw this in Dakota Access with the oil pipelines. They're doing this all over the country.
But at the end of the day, beyond forcing additional hearings, once FERC rules in favor of the line going forward and the navigation for it, that's basically it. Construction starts the next day. Is that the way it works?
No, not actually. That these, as I mentioned, these state permits. I mean, it's federal laws that allow the states to regulate these water permits can get in the way. We saw it in New York with a pipeline just last year where FERC had granted the permit, said it was fine to build, it met all the requirements, it was needed, and New York, my home state, is said no, we're not going to grant those permits for the water to go into these waterways, and so the company couldn't move forward. They can't move forward right now in building this pipeline, and they can go to court and try to sue and try to change those decision. But that's a pretty tough road to go. And then if you have to decide whether you want to invest in that time and energy and the money.
Common sense.
And who suffers? The consumers suffer at the end of the day. I mean, that's the really sad part of all this.
The consumers suffer, businesses suffer, jobs suffer. Everything suffers when you miss this opportunity to get this energy. Matt, in Virginia, Atlantic Coast Pipeline, Terry McAuliffe, our current governor, Democrat, has been a very, very active, very emphatic proponent of this pipeline. Although the governor can't sign the pipeline bill, as you know, you just walked us through how it can get muddied up or delayed. What impact does the governor of a state like Virginia have in getting the pipeline done and actually started? They don't have any legal status, but what other status do they have? And be specific as you can, or does it even matter?
Specifically, I mean, getting the support of a governor, I mean, it certainly is, as we've seen, a lot of these pipeline debates have been caught up in politics. I mean, if you get people like a governor of a state who, Democrat, Republican, who are supporting this and know that it's the right thing to do and know that it's going to be as safe as can be, it sends a big signal. It sends a signal to the consumers. It sends a signal to everyone that there's a lot of support behind this, and that it's a needed project and it's necessary. And so it's a very important to get the support of whether it's elected officials, as many as you can, and political candidates.
So we have a governor's race in Virginia: Ed Gillespie, Republican, and Ralph Northam, the Democrat. I've got Northam as the favorite. The Libertarian is not going to win, but obviously he could influence the race much like the Libertarian did in 2013, but he isn't going to win. The question is the support of the newly elected governor in Virginia going into the State House in January of 18. How critical is that to the pipeline that the governor be in favor of it? Does that make a difference?
I think it does. I think it sends a signal that he's serious about doing business, that he's serious about bringing companies and business into the state, that he's serious about protecting jobs and bringing lower cost energy to consumers throughout the state. So it's you can look at the one project with the pipeline, but when you look at all the energy projects and you look at how crucial energy is to business and industry and consumers around the country, and particularly in Virginia, and that he can send a serious signal to the rest of the legislature, to the rest of the state, to political allies or political enemies, and saying this is a road that I'm going on. This is a leadership position I'm taking. We're going to bring jobs into this state. We're going to help people get jobs. We're going to help consumers. We're going to help businesses. We're going to do better in this state. So that sends a huge signal.
So Matt, if you're a leader of one of the trade unions that are going to be involved in constructing the pipeline, right, then you're going to tend to favor the gubernatorial candidate that would like to see that go forward because it means union jobs. One would think that. Matt, give us an estimate of your best estimate here. And I ask everybody that comes on to talk about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, give me your best estimate when we break ground, when the first shovel hits the dirt.
I think we'd have to speak to the folks at Dominion and Duke and Piedmont and Southern who are looking at building this. I mean, they have a better sense. I don't, I don't know what phase they would be in once the permits are granted. But I would expect sometime they could start doing some work in the fall and then really start getting into the heavier construction season that starts sometime next spring.
All right, well,
I think that would be a fair estimate, but I'm not going to unfortunately, I don't get to get my hands dirty helping build it that much. But
I just am so anxious to get this thing moving. I want shovels and I want cranes and I want a dig and I want a pipeline, and we got to get this thing started. But so
you brought up a good point with labor, though. I mean, there's a lot of great jobs. I mean, you have a tremendous opportunity here to have over almost 9,000 jobs working on this project when it's being constructed each year, and it's it's labor. There's certain parts of labor that sometimes we have trouble working with, but a lot of times they support what we do. They want good jobs. They want to go to work. They want to help their communities and their families, and they want lower energy, and they want to be building things around this country. So they've been supportive of this pipeline and building a lot of energy projects and pipelines all over the nation.
Well, let me tell you the other thing that is really critical here is these are good jobs. I mean, these are good paying jobs. These are craftsmen. And, when Ralph Northam's primary opponent was challenging him for the nomination, former Congressman Tom Perriello would come on my show and say, well, these jobs are temporary. And it was a laughable statement because, well, all the people in these trades that work on this stuff, all their jobs are temporary. I mean, there's no permanent construction of anything. It gets built, and then you go to the next job site. So I thought that was a completely asinine argument. I mean,
it's just took great offense at that. I mean, President Obama had taken that tack too, and labor took offense at that as well. I mean, that's
what the job. That's what your career is. I mean, if you're a pipe fitter or you're a welder, your career is going from job site to job site. So this idea that, well, it's just a temporary job, like I'm a temp worker. No, I have a craft. I have a license. I'm a member of a union. I went through the apprentice school. And my career is I go from job site to apply my trade. And so that's such a stupid comment. For those of us who I grew up, as my listeners know, in a very pro-labor union household. And my father was a blue-collar worker. He was a pressman, but he had a trade and a craft. And they went, he would work at any different newspaper in New York City, depending on where he was sent that week or month. And so if you said to him that he had temporary jobs, he'd have gone nuts because that was his career. So it's just people that don't understand it is unbelievable.
If you look at the federal government's own number, I mean, for what they have for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average wage for a pipeline worker for a year, I mean, is over $73,000. I mean, it's a good job.
These are good paying jobs. And that's without overtime, when things get tough. So, look, these are good paying jobs, coupled with the fact is along that pipeline, you now can recruit manufacturing companies into the Commonwealth because they can go and set up right by the pipeline and tap in to the energy that comes off it from the natural gas. And, by the way, just so everybody knows how stupid the protesters' argument is, there's 2,200 miles of gas pipelines in Virginia right now. So it's likely wherever you're going, you're driving or stepping over one right now. So the whole thing is ridiculous. I got to take
2.4 million miles across the country.
How many?
2.4 million miles of natural gas pipelines around the country.